Thanks for coming and getting a coffee with me. You're coming into this campaign from a really different position to a lot of the other candidates because you've already served a term as a member of the Legislative Assembly for Ginninderra.
Yeah.
Was that experience anything like you expected it to be?
I'm asked that question all the time. Yes and no. I knew it would be. I knew it would be a lot of work, but I don't think I ever anticipated the variety of the work and just how many things there are to get across and keep in your head at one time. So, it might be policy developments that are for the benefit of the whole city, or it might be someone's rubbish collection got missed, or the nature strip near their place needs to get mowed, and keeping those things all in your head at once, I think, can be a bit of a challenge. And there's a lot of different demands on your time, but I think it has really helped. I've always been a really inquisitive person, and I've really dedicated this term to learning kind of the hows and whys of government. So I think coming into it, knowing how and why things work and being able to explain that to people is perhaps a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, well, there would be a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of things coming into all the decisions that you're making. Were there any major compromises that you had to make that you were hoping not to make maybe in the past term?
I don't think there were any major compromises. I think perhaps some things, perhaps one of the more tricky things to explain to people is election commitments are election commitments for the next 4 years, so over a term of Parliament, rather than they're all going to happen as soon as we get in. So we make election commitments and then we need to budget for them, and so we had quite a few election commitments that I was really keen to see that were budgeted for a little bit later in the term. So some of the things I had really heavily campaigned on, like a curbside bulky waste pickup collection service, that took until the last year or two to be budgeted for and to start being rolled out. So I did probably have some questions earlier on about when's this coming along, but I'm not in cabinet, I'm not a minister, so I was beholden to the decisions of cabinet and when that made sense for us to budget for it and to deliver it. But perhaps I would have liked to see it a little bit sooner, but I'm still delighted that it's getting done.
So if you are re-elected, will you be going into this term with a different mindset to what you had because of the experiences that you've had already and what you've learned?
I think I'll be going in feeling a lot more experienced, obviously, but I think we've got a really clear, we've coming off the back of a whole heap of things that I'm really proud to have seen delivered, and going into hopefully the next term, we're building on a lot of things as well. So achieving 100% renewable energy in the ACT is so massive, and that just gives us such a great platform to now do a whole heap of other things in that sector. And even things like our green waste bins, being able to deliver that was something that a lot of Canberrans were hanging out for. Now every Canberran who wants one has a green bin, but we're able to expand on that too with our approach that we're going to have food waste be able to put into your green waste bin and essentially create an industrial sized composting facility out of it. But that will also divert it'll reduce emissions, from landfill by about 30%. So I think that we've got a great story to tell and one that we can build on, and that's something I'm really looking forward to.
So you have achieved a lot of the things that you brought into the last election. Have the reasons that you're running changed because you've achieved so much already?
I think the reasons that I'm running is in 2016 I came from a space where I'd been really involved in the community, and I'd been able to affect a few changes within the community, but there were a whole heap of other things I wanted to do, and I knew to achieve that I needed to be in Parliament and hopefully to be in government, not just be in Parliament. And now that I've been there and been able to see that get done. There are plenty more things that I want to do. The list never ends, I suppose. It's always growing. And I'm having seen those things get delivered, I think the stakes are even higher for me this time, because having been in there, I know how important it is to have a progressive government and a one that's got a vision for the city, and I want to do everything possible to make sure it stays that way. So I think the stakes are probably a little bit higher this time, and this time last time people were judging me based on what I had told them I hoped to bring. This time people are judging me not only what I hope to continue to bring but what I've brought. Everything's just a little bit more intense this time.
Yeah, everything's a bit more intense for this election for everyone. Yeah. We've been talking to a lot of young people and students on campus to find out what is really important to them in this ACT election. And what we found is that there are really high rates of young people who are really disengaged in this election. Do you think that there is something lacking or within the ACT electoral system that kind of excludes young people from the discussion?
It's a good question. I don't think, I think there are probably some natural barriers for engaging with politics, and I think it's very easy for people to choose not to. I'm not political, or this doesn't affect me. But the thing is, decisions do affect people, and I think thinking about is this something that's going to affect me, should perhaps influence someone's vote, or what's the future of our city. I think that we've been doing quite a bit to reach people through, and it's not just young people, it's everybody, through a range of different media. And trying, I've personally been trying to be as proactive as possible, and I think it can be easy to try to funnel people through your preferred way of interacting with them. For me, it would probably be email, because that way there's a record of the conversation, and it can all be kept in the one place. But the thing is, people want to reach out via Facebook and via Instagram. They also just want to reach out at sometimes at the pub at 10 p.m. at night, and otherwise it's I think it's really kind of going to where people are in all the different ways that they are. So one of the busiest times of the day for me is actually about 8 p.m. at night, because that's when everyone's doing what I'm doing, which is probably watching The Bachelor or equivalent, and with their phone in hand and during the ads, scrolling and thinking about things, and then going, I might send a message about that. And so yes, I do think it's easy for people to be disengaged. I hope that they're not, but to the extent possible, I've certainly been trying to go to where people are, online, in person, knocking on their door, and just trying to be available and accessible, and just be a bit real as well.
Yeah, and you spoke about social media, and as far as the other candidates in ACT, you're very active on social media. You do your nightly updates as well. Do you have any way of tracking or processing how much young people in particular are engaging through your social media and insights?
Yes, I do. So Facebook in particular provides an incredible amount of analytics, and Instagram, obviously same owner, of what the age brackets are that people are engaging, and who in particular is engaging with you. And for me, with my social media, particularly Facebook and Instagram, it is largely women, and particularly women 25 to 34, but also younger women as well, and women a little bit older too. So I'm very aware of that, and even last night I chose to use Instagram to announce a policy regarding abortion in the ACT. And this morning, all of the reactions have been from younger women in the ACT, who, that's been a really good medium for me to use to let people know about our policy in that sector. So it is growing, but there's a whole heap of different platforms that people are using, and I think younger people are moving away from Facebook and Instagram and much more into TikTok, which I'm still working on. I need more time to understand TikTok.
That's right, me too. And it's really great that there is a place where individuals can interact with you personally like that, especially since in the ACT we don't vote for a party as much as we vote for individuals. Do you think that people know you and your policies as an individual more so than just your connection with Labor?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm a very proud Labor Party member and have been since I was 20, and that's fundamental to who I am. But I think that I've tried to go out of my way to explain who I am and kind of the things that I stand for, and to make that clear. And I think what came up for me in the last election is that you can't say something too much. There's always someone that you haven't reached, that you haven't spoken to, or who hasn't seen you, or might not even know your name. And you might feel like you've said something or explained who you are 20, 30,000 times, but continuing to let people know, I think, is really important. And I think people, I've really tried to be a local member, while also standing up for some progressive issues, particularly at the start of someone's life and at the end of someone's life. And I think that's what I'll be associated with. Even I've had someone, or quite a few people actually recently say to me regarding my signs on the side of the road, that I have a whole heap of signs that go Tara, 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 and then my face, and with Tara Cheyne. And they go, like, that kind of fits with your identity of being neighbourly and folksy, and that I can approach you. You're just Tara. You're not Ms. Tara Cheyne MLA, divorced from the everyday person. You're Tara standing on the street corner who I can come up and have a chat to. And so I've been very deliberate in how I approach my messaging, because I am a local member and I want everything about me to give that impression.
So as far as policy and the way that you act in Parliament, what sets you apart from every single other Labor candidate who has their name on the ballot for Ginninderra?
I think the thing is, for starters, I'm a young woman and a young woman in Parliament. So in ACT Labor, Michael Pedersen is younger than me by a few years, but I was very pleased to have been elected at 29. A bit older now, but still I'm I think I have youth and experience now, and I think that does set me apart. I have spent a lot of time on committees in this term of Parliament, and so I think as time consuming as that's been, and at times has taken me a little bit away from the electorate, it has really helped with my understanding of the how and why things work. And I think I just make sure that everything local is my business, and I can talk about a range of things and where they are up to. And I think that I've gone out of my way to be available and accessible, and as much as I can responsive. But by being quite available and accessible, I have lots of people then reach out to me, and it takes me a little bit longer to get back to everybody. But certainly by reaching out to people or being there where they are, people feel a connection to me and in some cases a friendship with me, and I'm really pleased with that and hope to build on that, but I think that does set me apart.
Yeah, well, you are still a part of Labor, and one of the benefits and pitfalls of being part of a major party is that decisions are often made at a lot of different levels, at the state, territory and federal level, and yet ACT has been able to be active on climate change in a way that Labor hasn't been able to be federally or in other states. Why do you think that is?
I think that Canberra is a progressive city, and I think ACT Labor reflects the city, and the city almost reflects ACT Labor's values in a lot of sense. And I think that we've also been really in tune with the community. We do have lots and lots of conversations in the ACT, and by having those conversations, we know what matters, which helps shape our values as well. And climate change has been firmly on our agenda, and I think we've been really proud about what we've been able to achieve, particularly in the last decade. And I think what sets us apart is being in government. Certainly sets us apart federally. Yes, there's plenty you can do from opposition, but it's a lot about holding the government to account and making a point of things. Whereas in government allows you to do things and to get things done. And I think Canberrans putting their trust in us to get things done and us doing them kind of is a bit of a cycle, so that we continue to earn that trust, get things done, and by getting things done, earn that trust again.
So what's next as far as climate change goes for ACT Labor?
Yeah, so some of our policies that we've announced are all about reducing emissions. So in the ACT, we want to be zero net emissions by 2045, and one of the biggest emitters is transport. So whether that's your private vehicle or your public transport, and we need to lead the way. So with our government-issued fleet of private vehicles, they're transitioning to be hybrid or electric, but one of the biggest costs, of course, is our buses, and so we are moving to replace and grow our fleet with battery electric buses, and we have been trialling some over the last few years just to find what is the right one for the kind of services that we need in the ACT, and we think we've found that. So 90 new buses in the next term. We're also looking at what we can do to reduce emissions from the waste sector. We know that 1/3 of people's household waste is their food waste. So there's a very active campaign at the moment called Love Food, Hate Waste, which is encouraging people to reduce their food waste in the first place. But we will be utilising our green waste bins, so people can put their food waste into their green waste bins, and as I said, that will hopefully reduce emissions by about 30% from the waste sector. And we've recently partnered with a small company which is using some of the gases that are coming out of our landfill to power homes in the ACT. So wherever, if wherever landfill is inevitable, if we can try and capture the negative effects out of that and convert them into something positive, we've certainly got a focus there. And one of our big initiatives is a $150 million scheme to offer people up to $15,000 in zero interest loans for solar panels, household battery storage and hot water heat pumps. And that'll just be a simple credit check and can take up to 10 years for people to pay them off. But that will help us create jobs in the private sector, but also help lower costs for the average household as well, and of course tackle climate change.
Do you expect the rest of the party federally and in other states to follow ACT Labor in these steps?
Yeah, I do actually. I think it's been really pleasing to see federal Labor increasingly point to the ACT as a leading jurisdiction and led by a Labor government, and what you can do, and if you've got a progressive government in charge. So yes, if federal Labor is lucky enough to be elected, I really hope that this is something that they will push, and I'm confident that it will be, because the narrative there is certainly heading in that direction, and the ACT does have a voice in influencing our national platform as well. So the more that we can speak up and proudly talk about our achievements, the more other people will listen.
Yeah, well, like you said, Labor is in government in ACT, but we are just a very small part acting within a Commonwealth that seems to be going in the opposite direction to us. Has that posed any major challenges for Labor in addressing climate change?
Yeah, I think it has and it hasn't, because we are a small jurisdiction. we do have quite a bit of control of what's going on here. But I think federally, with the Council of Australian Governments, that's been very interesting to watch, and now National Cabinet meeting so much more regularly. The ACT does have an equal voice at the table there, and is able to put forward its view, in addition to ministerial councils as well. So even though we're a small jurisdiction, I think we're a bit of a mighty jurisdiction, and it's a bit of wait and see at the moment with National Cabinet and the appetite for it. But while ever it exists and it's meeting more regularly, there's more opportunity to have those conversations at that integrated national level to try and influence policy in a range of areas, not just climate change.
So look, at risk of asking the COVID question,
yeah.
COVID has really disproportionately affected young people, and students were a lot more likely to be in casual, gig-based and short-term work, and it's left a lot of people either without work or with a lot less work. And of course, JobKeeper, JobSeeker is a federal issue and it's not an ACT issue, but one thing that's really affecting students is the lack of housing stability. Can ACT Labor give young people any assurances that we will have somewhere to stay if we're left out on the street and facing homelessness?
Yeah, so a few aspects there. First of all, we have announced a moratorium on rental evictions in the ACT. It doesn't mean that you don't pay rent at some stage, but if you can't pay rent for a little while, there is a moratorium in place so that you can continue to have a roof over your head. We are really working on job creation and filling in the gaps where people aren't eligible for JobSeeker or JobKeeper, and there's quite a bit of that. We've been really proud to established the Jobs for Canberrans Fund, which has been over 500 jobs for people who didn't fall within JobKeeper or JobSeeker, and that's been semi-skilled work as well, so you haven't necessarily needed to be hugely qualified to get a job there, but it's put people into paid work, and paid work of course is a big contributor to being able to be in a stable home. But ACT Labor also we're incredibly passionate about ensuring that there's enough housing options available for people, whether that be at the public housing and social housing and community housing level, to making things more affordable for people. We have, with COVID, not only are we looking to increase our public housing, but with COVID in particular, we've been offering landlords considerable discounts off their land tax if they can prove that they're lowering their rents. So kind of everyone gets something out of that if landlords choose to engage. So it is just about trying to make sure that no one falls through the cracks. We certainly do not want to come out of this with any increase in homelessness. In fact, we want it to go down, and it's about having solutions in a range of different ways to ensure that there are no cracks.
Yeah, and you mentioned public housing, and ACT Labor has mentioned making 240 new public housing units in Canberra. Yeah. If you're going into another coalition with the Greens, like you have been, would you consider raising that to what they've proposed, which is 1,000 houses?
So yeah, that's not a matter for me. Unfortunately, it's something that I wouldn't be able to confirm. So
would you support that though?
Again, it's up to the leaders in their negotiations. So something that happens and has happened, where we have been in partnership with the Greens for some time now, but once the result is known, then ACT Labor would be sitting down with the Greens if the Greens were required to form majority government, and that's where the different parties talk about what their different policies are and look to come to a parliamentary agreement. But it is a matter for the leaders, and I'm certainly not going to preempt any discussions or even the election result.
So the election is coming up in just a couple of weeks, and pre-polls open in just a couple of days, so it's a very exciting time. I'm a member of the Greens, so I'm very excited to see what happens, but I wish you all the best of luck for the rest of your campaign, and thank you so much for meeting with us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.